Hey, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Peru Channel podcast. I'm your host, Philip, and in this episode, I'm going to talk about 9 places in or around Cusco's historical center that you can visit for absolutely free. Some of them are quick visits that will only take a few moments, while others are a little more extensive and will take more time depending on how much of that time you want to invest. I'll list these in order towards my favorite coming at the end, but it's really hard to separate them all as they're really cool places to visit and each has its own special attractiveness and interest. In case you're wondering why I chose 9, the truth is I wanted to have 10, but couldn't come up with another place that I thought was worth including on this list. So I decided to just leave it at 9. Okay, let's get started with number 9, the Cienciano Burro. I don't know why, but ever since I first noticed this little statue, I've been fascinated with it as I don't know of anything like it in Cusco. Sitting just to the left of the entrance of one of Cusco's most venerable schools, the Colegio Nacional de Ciencias del Cusco, that's the National School of Sciences of Cusco. This statue caught my eye one day as I was wandering around the city, just bored, be honest. A statue of a donkey is really not so unusual, especially in a city that showcases its rural roots. But this one was standing with his left foot on top of a football. That's a soccer ball, by the way, for those of you in the U.S. It caught my eye, and I thought that is so strange. This little donkey looks so out of place in front of one of Cusco's oldest schools. But as I approached, that's when I noticed the ball. I'm not sure why I find this so interesting. It's not funny, but it's certainly unusual and seemingly out of place. On the donkey's back, or on the statue's back, there are school books labeled with normal school subjects that emphasize its relationship to the school as well as football. Of course, as soon as I got home, I quickly researched the significance of a donkey playing burro in front of a secondary school. It turns out that one of Cusco's 3 First Division football teams is named Cienciano as recognition of its relationship to the school. The team was founded way back in 1901, reportedly by a group of students, though I've also heard that it was a group of faculty members who chose the name as a variation of that of their school. The popular team in Cusco, Cienciano, was the first Peruvian club to win an international trophy when they took the Copa Sudamerica title 22 years ago in 2003. That's still a legendary feat remembered by all Peruanos and especially by all Cusqueños. Number 8, Plaza San Francisco. This plaza sits right in front of the Colegio de Ciencias. Hope I said that right. And the majestic San Francisco Church. This is one of my favorite places to visit because it's a huge favorite with locals. It's located about halfway between the Plaza de Armas and the San Pedro area. It's a great place to just sit in the shade of one of the many, many trees. In fact, it's probably the most shaded plaza in Cusco, and you could just sit there and watch the city go by. You don't see many tourists here, but you can watch the city life play out much as it's done for centuries here. Often there are little kiosks and tents set up, especially on the weekends or on special occasions, where locals sell all kinds of goods, including the usual tourist souvenirs, but frequently some impressive artwork, clothes, hats, and lots of other things depending on what's going on. In fact, sometimes one of my favorite times is when there are food booths set up and you can get all kinds of stuff to eat. It's really lively any day of the year though. Like any outdoor space in Cusco, weekends are especially busy. If you have time, take a drink or maybe buy some ice cream across the street and just grab a seat on the bench under a tree and watch Cusco go by. Just 20 to 30 minutes will give you an appreciation for what the city is really like, I promise. Despite being in the touristic heart of the city, this is a place of respite for locals and a chance to get a much better flavor of everyday life. Okay, number 7, Cristo Blanco. If you're in the Plaza de Armas and look up in the general direction to the north, you'll see a large statue of Jesus Christ standing with arms spread, like the more famous one in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro. You can climb up from Cusco by taking the trail that leads to Sacsayhuaman. It's a very, very challenging climb, though, and it's over 11,000 feet or 3,400 meters in altitude, and I strongly recommend it only for those in good shape. The altitude here is brutal, as everyone notices when they first get off the plane or step off a bus. But the steepness of this climb is probably even worse. To make matters even harder, once you make it almost to the entrance of Sacsayhuaman, you have to turn to the right and continue to climb another really steep, really challenging dirt trail. The easiest way to get there is to take a taxi or a tour, which includes Cristo Blanco. The taxi is going to cost you probably around 10 soles. There's also the option of taking either the white Cristo Blanco bus or the blue and white Señor del Huerto bus, as both will take you to within a short uphill walk for 1 sol. But neither of these buses go through central Cusco, so finding a place to catch a ride might be a bit problematic if you don't know where to go, although you can just ask anyone and they'll point you in the right direction. Keep in mind that you can always walk back downhill afterwards for free, and you can combine it with a trip to Sacsayhuaman. The statue itself stands 8 meters high with its arms outspread as a symbol of protection of the city. It was designed by a Cusco artist, but it was commissioned as a gift from Arab Palestinians in the Middle East, and it was begun way back in 1944 and then finished a year later. It's a really popular spot not only for the statue itself, but also for the panoramic views across Cusco from above. It's a wonderful place for photos, not only with the statue, but also the city spread out below in one of the best views in town of Cusco from high above. Okay, number 6, the Mirador de San Cristobal. If you look up from the Plaza de Armas, you can see the Templo de San Cristobal Church, or the St. Christopher Church. It sits up to the north, and the viewpoint up there is probably the most popular among locals because it just has an expansive view across the city. Only the Cruz Moco viewpoint at Sacsayhuaman is better, but that costs money and is a whole lot harder to reach. On a clear day, you can see all the way down the valley and even get a spectacular view of Alzongate rising 21,000 feet as the region's highest mountain way off in the distance. What most people don't realize is that Alzongate is actually about 60 miles or 100 kilometers away. It looks much, much closer, but its massive size and height are deceiving. And on these clear days, the Andean air makes it look so much closer. La Plaza de Armas is not too far below, and you can watch people and cars pass back and forth like ants or toys in some kind of playful scene. It's really kind of a unique perspective. There are always people selling drinks near the back section, and if you're brave enough to eat street food, you can get a really cheap but incredibly delicious meal for almost nothing. Don't forget to take note of the Inca wall along the backside. This was likely the palace of Cusco's first Inca ruler many centuries ago. Up until just a few months ago, though, you could walk along the wall and examine the stone construction or just relax in the grass as many young people and families chose to do. But for some reason, they put up a gate and now it's closed off. For just a few soles, you can visit inside the San Cristobal Church and climb up to the bell tower for an even more spectacular view of the city, which, though it's not free, is very cheap and it's highly recommended. You can take a taxi up to the Mirador, which, by the way, that means viewpoint or overlook in Spanish, but it's a lot better to walk up from the Plaza de Armas along the Calle Espalosa. That name means slippery street, and its name is really appropriate because when it's raining, that street is so slippery. Part of the pavement is made up of blue granite stones that can be found all over the city, and they just become like ice when wet. And to be honest, they're pretty slippery even when dry after centuries and centuries of feet wearing them down. Number 5, Palacio de Inca Roca. Almost everyone who comes to Cusco takes a moment to stop and see the famous 12-angle stone along Hatun Rumiok Street, less than 2 blocks from the Plaza de Armas. It has become a major tourist attraction for reasons that are hard to understand, except that it's simply a unique place to take photos at Cusco's busiest souvenir areas. The stone's claim to fame is that it has 12 corners and rather neatly fits into the wall. People make a big deal out of the large number of corners, but it's neither unique, and there certainly are stones in the region that have many more corners than this. I did a blog post about it last year, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you're interested. While this is an interesting place to get a photo, like hundreds or thousands of other people every day, the really amazing part of this wall is that it's only a small part of just one of the three exterior remaining walls of the palace of the Emperor Inca Roca. The stonework on this street is amazing, but it's not quite what the others, or not quite what other people like to claim. One, the walls are not earthquake proof or even earthquake resistant, as you see all over social media. The wall was originally much higher. In fact, it was reconstructed after the 1650 and 1950 earthquakes. In fact, there is no such thing as earthquake proof or earthquake resistant Inca construction. Everything was meant to be maintained, and 99% of Inca walls were reduced to rubble long ago. The wall around the corner to the left shows significant damage, but the wall on the opposite side of the building from the 12 angle stone is an even better example of Inca construction. Here you can see better examples of how the stones were placed, but you can also see how the Spanish reconstructed the wall after the 1650 earthquake by reusing collapsed stones. Only the wall section along Calle Herreras is completely gone. The building itself now houses the former Archbishop's Palace Museum, which, while it's not one of my favorites, is worth taking an hour to stroll through. I can't remember the cost, but I think it's like 10 or 15 soles. There is a modern day myth about the stones on the east side of the palace, in front of the many less visited shops, that the stones were specifically placed to resemble shapes of certain animals of importance to the Inca, including a puma and a serpent. The truth is, this was made up not that long ago by a 12-year-old boy and his cousin, thinking it might be a way to get tourists to wander down towards their shop along this side street. Sadly, stuff like this becomes a part of Cusco's completely made up mythology based on absolutely nothing legitimate. Number four on my list of free things you can do is just to wander around and walk the streets of Cusco's Central Historic District. While wandering the streets can get a little tiring, as I know it's very high in altitude, like I said before, and it can sometimes during the busy season get even more frustrating because you have to stroll through jam-packed Disney World crowds, but with tiny sidewalks. You still get a chance to see examples of many, many kinds of Inca construction. Lots of social media experts like to push that the large stone constructions like that in front of the Inca Roca Palace that I just talked about are normal, but the truth is there is almost nothing like that in Cusco except for that particular building and two small spots a few blocks away with a handful of stones. Most Inca construction in central Cusco was done with much smaller stones using what looks more like modern day course style, where the stones are placed in lines one on top of another. Depending on the period and, of course, the people in charge, the styles do vary, and you see quite a bit of different styles. Honestly, I could talk all day about the different styles because I've done quite a bit of research on them. But the best thing you can do, and probably the most interesting to just about anyone, is to just wander around a few blocks in any direction from the Plaza de Armas, especially to the east and north, and find lots of examples of remaining walls that survived colonial and modern times while just marveling at each of the buildings. Compare them to see how there are sometimes subtle differences. Most of the stones came from one of two quarries many kilometers away, but there are even differences in the quality of the stones coming from just a single quarry. Imagine Inca workers transporting each stones from far down the valley or from up in the mountains to the east so that Inca master stonemasons could fit thousands of stones into shapes that would fit precisely. Usually in central Cusco, this was done without mortar for the highest quality construction. But in contrast to another groundless myth, almost all Inca construction actually used mortar. Number three is the Saturday street market near San Pedro. If you really want to experience Cusco in Peru, you have to walk through the street market area around the San Pedro market, preferably on a Saturday morning when it's busiest. A lot of people say that the San Pedro market is a real Cusco market, and it probably was a long time ago, but now it's almost completely a tourist market. Many guides funnel people there without telling them that they receive significant commissions of up to 20% on everything that you buy. For that reason, there are lots and lots and lots of stalls and stores inside the San Pedro market. The only real local section of the market is in the back area, which has dozens and dozens of food stalls. This is a true food lover's delight, as you can sit on a wooden chair or bench alongside locals while someone prepares you a cheap, filling meal. I can't vouch for its cleanliness, but I've never heard of anyone getting sick there. The food is definitely good. In fact, sometimes it's really good, with an emphasis on things like soups and other items that can be made in advance and dished out of a big pot waiting for you. I'm somebody that really doesn't care much for soups, but these are really good. Even for someone who doesn't like them, they are delicious. To be honest, though, the chances of finding a foreigner here are rare, but it's going to be most likely jammed with tourists, especially around lunchtime, who go there for a quick, filling, and tasty lunch. It's outside the San Pedro market, especially on the side bordering Tres Cruces de Oro Street, where you're going to find an unbelievable array of people filling the sidewalks for many blocks with just about everything you can imagine for sale. Many rural people come to Cusco the night before or very early in the morning, long before sunrise, to sell food items like fruits and vegetables grown in their own backyards or perhaps grown in their neighbors' gardens. Flowers are a big item in one section just across the street from San Pedro. There are tons of stalls selling meats and produce that are just about as fresh as anything you can get anywhere. While I probably wouldn't recommend the meats for a tourist, the fruits are amazingly cheap and fresh and in quantities that will blow you away for almost no money. What's most fun is that this is a real market that real Cusqueños visit, not some made for tourism place where you can get souvenirs and fake local clothing and eat tourist meals that no local would ever consider. The crowds, and it will be crowded, are normal people doing weekend shopping to feed their families or perhaps stock some tiny family run restaurant almost hidden in a back room behind a nondescript doorway somewhere in Cusco. Both the sellers and buyers are doing business in a way that really hasn't changed much over the last 600 years. Go slow, prepare to be constantly jostled, and just enjoy the experience because there are very few places like this. As far as safety, I like to go early in the morning when the pickpockets likely are still sleeping after a night of carousing. Now, I'm talking about Saturday when they've been out on Friday nights. The tourists and those who cater them will not likely be out yet in any significant number, so it'll just be you and local people. I never carry anything worth stealing, and my money and cell phone are always in a pant pocket sealed with a good zipper. I've never had any problems except once when somebody threw some kind of grain at me from behind while I was filming. I never saw who did it, but some of the people behind me were apparently scolding someone for throwing rice on someone. I mean, let's face it, even though I've lived here for many years now, I'm still a foreigner. I still look like a foreigner, not a Peruvian. I don't dress up in cosplay outfits like a lot of people do, trying to look like locals. Because I promise you, locals don't dress like they do. But anyway, I don't think they were trying to harass a foreigner. I think somebody was probably ticked off that I was filming. Either way, it never happened again, and I've never felt the least bit concerned about safety, even on the most crowded of days. For me, the biggest issue is the feeling of just being closed in all directions by the often heavily packed crowds trying to make their through walkways that literally may only be a few inches wide. The good thing is that everyone accepts that being pushed around a little and dealing with the constant bumping by everyone else is a part of the market and no one really pays attention to it. Don't be afraid to be a little aggressive as you walk through the market because everyone else will be, and anything else is just going to make you stand out and get you nowhere. If you wait for the crowds to give you room, you're going to be there a long time and people are going to get really frustrated and maybe even a little angry with you. I promise this is one of the best experiences that you will never forget, and it's going to remain one of the best memories long after you've forgotten all the selfies that you took in Cusco. My second most favorite place is kind of hard to explain. I can describe it, but it's kind of hard to explain why it's so interesting to me. The Sapantiana, yeah, I think I said that right, is really not one of my favorite places just because it's almost always packed with people. But what puts it so high on my list is it's packed with people for good reason. It's located at the top of Choquechaca Street on the way towards Sacsayhuaman, and within a very small area are some of the coolest places to see in all of Cusco. It's a place where you must take a camera because it's also the most photogenic part of Cusco. The signature part of the area is the little street, Calle Siete Borguitos, or Seven Little Lamb Street, that is a seemingly never ending set of stairs going up. Before the COVID pandemic, it was a basic street with just a handful of shops. But when things were slow or non existent for the businesses, someone got the idea of decorating the street with flowers grown in simple buckets along the side of the street. This grew into more and more flowers and plants, more decorations, and lots of artwork along the way. It went from a rather plain, narrow path to a beautiful place with, where there are countless opportunities for colorful photos at almost every step. The centerpiece is the massive Sapantiana Huaca stone. Trust me, when you get there, you can't miss this huge rock. Much of it's covered by enigmatic Inca carvings, and it's difficult to describe what a Huaca was to the Inca. But basically, it's a sacred place or thing that, in a sense, it was alive to the Incas, and it embodied within it a spirit that the Inca people felt was a part of their world in every aspect. Next to the Sapantiana stone is a small river that is usually nothing more than a slow flowing stream. If you follow the path and it's well marked, in a few meters you're going to see a breathtaking Spanish aqueduct, one of only two remaining in the region and the only one that still exists in Cusco itself. Be prepared to wait in line to get pictures of yourself with the aqueduct and the stream in the background, but I promise you it will be worth it. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not in any way a fan of countless selfies that probably no one else really wants to see. But this is a place where you simply have to get some photos. It's just too beautiful not to do so. And as long as you don't take too long, everyone's going to wait patiently for their turn if there are others ahead. Keep in mind that this is often a popular spot for professional photographers to do portraits for special occasions, especially on the weekends like Saturday and Sunday mornings. If you look close as the stream passes down below the Sapantiana stone, you can see where it flows into what looks like a drainage opening. For centuries, through the Inca times up until the early mid 20th century, depending on the source, the street below was actually open to the river with both sides and the bottom lined with stonework until the municipality decided to pave it over for several kilometers. There are lots of photos that you can find on the internet of Choquechaca Street that has a small sidewalk on both sides, but the street itself that exists now was a river. Above the stone, if you're interested in climbing up, is something that I don't know. It also catches my eye. It looks so interesting because it's so out of place. There's a large swimming pool complete with starting platforms for racing. It looks like it hasn't been used for a long time, and I can't imagine how it could be used without being heated at this cold, high Andean altitude. But people certainly used to swim there. I don't know if it was heated or not, but I don't know the history of this pool, and I can only guess at its origins. But it's always fascinated me as it's one of the most out of place sites anywhere in the city. Easily my number one favorite place to spend time for free in Cusco is the very heart of the city in every sense of the word, the Plaza de Armas. This was also the location of the plaza for the Incas, though at that time it was 2 to 3 times larger. So for centuries, the center of Cusco has been in the same place, something that hasn't changed at all. One day I'll do at least part of a podcast or maybe a blog post or a video about the history of the plaza because there's a lot of fascinating things that you don't get from guides. The best part is just watching the energy of Cusco ebb and flow and knowing that it really hasn't changed much over so many centuries. It's where countless religious processions have taken place, going back to the days when the Incas used to carry mummies of all the previous Inca leaders for major events during the year. The same tradition continues to this day in the form of the Corpus Christi celebration, where the 15 patron saints from the surrounding parish churches are brought to the plaza and paraded in front of the faithful, just like the Inca mummies were paraded back 600 years ago. Almost any day of the year, you can walk down the plaza and be surprised by some kind of religious procession, or more likely, some kind of parade celebrating something cultural involving the city or the region. These are not tourist events. Only the big Inti Raymi event on June 24th is a made for tourism event. In fact, only a small percentage of those who take the time to watch any of these events are foreigners. These are huge for the local people. It's a chance to celebrate not only their culture, but also how the culture is embodied in its people. If you're ever in Cusco and happen upon something like this in the plaza, take some time to watch not only the participants, but also the people who are lining the street watching. Every generation of a family may be there to watch other family members marching or performing, and there's a kind of a deep pride that you'll quickly figure out. On the weekends, and really almost any time in any day of the week, you can see the plaza filled with people of all ages, from the youngest toddlers to kids playing in the closed off street in front of the cathedral. You see teenagers frequently practicing and filming dances for TikTok. The elderly sit on the benches talking and sharing stories of life, just as has been done all over the world since time began. You see kids going back and forth to school, families walking. A lot of tourists pass through, but they tend to pass through. They don't spend much time there except when they're getting photos in front of the fountain. It's hard to explain, but like the Plaza San Francisco, if you want to get a feel for what the real Cusco experience is like and what the people are like, go to the Plaza de Armas and just walk around and people watch. I promise you'll get a better idea of what the city is like than you will any other way. If I've missed some place that's important and special to you, please share it with a comment either in the show notes or if you're listening to this on YouTube at the bottom in a comment. While these are my favorites, I certainly don't expect everyone to feel the same way about each. And if you visited or experienced any of these places, please take a moment and let me know your thoughts. What did you think of it? What did you like best? What are some things that I didn't talk about? Okay, as for news in this area, there's really not a lot to share, which is probably a good thing. The best update that I can tell you about is that if you're going to Machu Picchu without a ticket in the next few weeks, there's a very good chance that you're going to be able to get a ticket very easily. I was there last week, and though I had a ticket to climb the big Machu Picchu mountain the next morning, I thought I'd stick my head in and see what the last minute purchase process was like. Because there have been all kinds of talk for months about how horrible the lines were, how lengthy the process was, how challenging it was to go through all of this. But to my great surprise, there was almost no one there, and there was no line waiting at all. Though everyone had been warning for months that you need to get there as early as possible to make sure tickets are available, especially for the most the most what am I trying to say? The most popular circuits, I didn't see anyone. I returned again at 5 p.m., 11 hours after the Cultural Center had opened to sell the next day's tickets, and found that almost exactly half, 498 of the 1,000 daily last minute tickets that are available, were still sitting there unsold, including 98 out of 100 tickets for Circuit 2, which is easily the most popular circuit. Unfortunately, I forgot to see if there were tickets available for Circuit 3 that included the climb up to Huayna Picchu, which is the second most popular route, but I imagine it would have been possible to get a ticket for that too. Keep in mind that this is the slow season for Peruvians who, frankly, are the most likely to try to arrive without a ticket, according to people in the tourism industry there and people I've spoken to in the past. Right now, there are 5,600 tickets available each day, and that includes the 1,000, quote, day before tickets. On October 16th, the number drops to 4,500 until June 1st when it goes back up. There are a couple of days around New Year's, I believe, when the capacity goes back up to 5,600. Keep in mind that there are several routes that are unavailable during the slow season, and you can see which routes are closed on the official website. A couple of weeks ago, one of Cusco's local officials asked the government to raise the limit to 5,600 all year long and to 5,900 during the busy season based on some unsighted study from 10 years ago that Machu Picchu could accommodate the large number of tourists. I frankly doubt that such an increase is going to take place, but you just never know here as money is everything when it comes to what happens at Machu Picchu. One request that will surely be strongly considered and adopted is to allow the purchase of tickets for 2026 more than a few days before the start of the year. In the past couple of years, you couldn't get a ticket for January until at least the middle of December, barely 2 weeks before, and that was if you could get one at all because there were incredibly long lines and the website was constantly crashing and tickets were frequently unavailable. And there were lots of claims of corruption that caused tickets to show up as sold out in a matter of minutes or even seconds. That could come up again, but you never know what the Ministry of Culture is going to do. Reportedly, they're considering making changes, but there haven't been any announcements yet. One of the things that has come up in the last couple of days, in fact, this morning there was some news, is that Concertor, which operates the buses carrying people from Aguascalientes up the mountain to Machu Picchu itself, their contract ran out yesterday. As is typical, there had been no negotiations, there had been no plans to renegotiate the contract with Concertor or with anyone else. So there was lots of talk of will there even be any kind of transportation taking thousands of people up to Machu Picchu this morning. But the latest news is the buses are operating normally right now. I can't imagine that the government is going to shut down the buses even though they don't have a contract because the amount of bad publicity from that would be more than they could handle. Okay, that's it for this episode. I hope you found it useful, and as I mentioned earlier, please leave a comment, good or bad. It just doesn't matter as I want to know what you think and especially how you think I can do better. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you in Peru soon.